The Andrew Lake Podcast.
Now in collaboration with Acid Quote Tees.
Feel the rhythm now.
10,000 years!
All connected.
Hibbity gaga boo boo. And I say, how are you? Welcoming you back once again to the quote of the day. It's the acid quote of the day. This is Doster Andrew Lake, hoping you're fine. Oh my goodness, it is way too early for this. Rise and shine. Why is the voice... Have you ever noticed that your voice changes throughout the day? There's this early morning voice. When you first wake up, there's a softness or a kind of depth or a kind of something in the voice. Now, it's logical because as you go throughout your day and you use your voice, it gets a little bit worn down. Which, even in that, I'm not so sure I buy that. Because if you go through a day and you use your hands don't really get worn out. Unless you're doing some work with your hands. If you're making coffees or playing piano, and you're doing that quite a lot and quite strenuously, then your hands might feel a little bit sore or a little bit fatigued. But throughout the day, if you're just doing normal stuff, your hands don't, you don't get to the end of the day and say, oh, my hands are very tired. Or and it's the same with the voice, right? That's what I'm trying to say with the voice. Your voice doesn't get tired, and yet it does change. It's really curious. I mean, why do we never think about what it is that the parts of us really experience? What is it that the hands really go through? I mean, I remember I was in an awareness intensive once, and we did this section on hands. It was actually it's a very weird sort of exercise because we were told to sit down with a partner and then describe our hands to our partner. Maybe this is where I'm getting this from. Maybe this is what's coming back to me now. And we had to describe the feelings and the things that they did and the way that they moved. And it was really difficult because the hands are so everyday used. They're so always there, so they're always ever present. What actually ended up happening in the group was sort of quite funny in retrospect, which was that a bunch of people became upset at how simple the awareness technique was. And they got annoyed at the facilitator and they said, I want my money back. I don't want to be part of this group. And they actually left and they went to the administration and it was this big thing and half the group left and we ended up having to continue it with only 6 or 7 people. I mean, there must have been over a dozen people in the group. But it's funny that something so present is difficult to describe. It's almost like the opposite of that thing, that something so rare is difficult to describe. If we have a spectrum, then language sort of fits in the middle somewhere, doesn't it? Which is that when you talk to someone about something, it's not completely general. It is specific, but it's never exactly specific. And maybe this has something to do with our quote of the day, which is, everything has something to say about almost anything. This is a play on this idea or this sort of turn of joke, which is that opinions are like assholes, which is that everyone's got one and they all stink. And everything has something to say about almost anything is meant to be a play on that thing, which is everyone's got an opinion, where actually everything communicates to you. Everything has a message to say what it is. Your hands tell you something about yourself. The feeling in your hands gives you a indication of how they are being used. Certain things, if you use your hands on them, they give you this uncomfortable warmness. There's an uncomfortable energy to it. It's almost like if you wash your hands too much under warm water. Washing your hands is nice, yeah? It's good to have clean hands. That feels nice. And yet, if you wash your hands every 20 minutes, then you're going to end up with this tingling sensation. Well, I know this because I've often worked in kitchens and in cafes where you're using food a lot, so you do have to wash your hands quite a lot, and that's where I get that experience from. But if you were just doing that just because, then it wouldn't feel so nice, and your hands would then be expressing something to you. And this is a far cry from the people who express their opinion, the people that have their comment on everything. The people that always try to come in on the current topic, on the current times, and say, well, this is what I think is going on. And the funny thing is that now we have this phenomenon of audience capture, which is where the person is saying something as pandering to an audience. They are trying to say something in order to evoke a certain response to a certain collection of people, because that's what's prolonging their engagement and their relevance, their sense of what it is that they are in touch with. And of course, it doesn't make sense for anyone to stand up and say, I don't have an opinion on this. I don't have anything to say about so-and-so or such and such. I don't think about it. I'm not interested in it. And there is something in that being like, well, you're boring and you're not sophisticated and you're not engaged. Which is right. Yeah, that's one side of it. And I guess there's a number of ways to be disengaged, which is that if you're not engaged, it's not necessarily that you're not sophisticated. It's that you're, interested in other things. It's that you don't get into tangles. It's that you don't feel the need to go into these explanations, these things that are, cultural commentaries, cultural blabber. I mean, we have this informational sphere now. We have this phenomenon of talking heads, which of course is what I am, right? This is what we're involved in right here. But the difference here is that we're trying to create something of your individual. We're trying to allow something to be expressive of yourself, which is of you. And not many speakers are aware of that. Now, of course, it's not only here that you can find that. There are plenty of places and plenty of speakers who very much do encourage your individuality. They speak to something within you that is authentic, that is of your pure essence, that is of something that is beautiful to come forth from within you. And that's very different to evoking outrage over a political situation or a cultural situation, or coming along with a set of beliefs or a strong assertings of a kind of truth. And I say assertings of truth when really I just mean beliefs. If you have a collection of beliefs about how a situation is to be, and you strongly assert it, and then someone comes along and puts a voice to that, and you think, yes, that's right, that's exactly how it is, and you agree with them, and you're amazed at how intricately and how amazingly they can explain it, that's got nothing to do with bringing out your pure essence. That's just you having your beliefs reinforced. And the informational sphere is such that there's so many people saying enough different things that you can find a web of beliefs that suits you perfectly. You can find someone that is saying exactly what you believe. That's why you so strongly believe with the people that you listen to. Now, of course, if you're listening to me, you're probably over that already. You see, the thing is that if you're listening to me, you're probably in the exact thing in a very different way, which is that I'm saying, yes, you see that you agree, and you see, yes, that is how it is. Whereas here, we're trying to actually break that without falling into it by saying, no, we're actually just having a conversation. And we're not pushing an idea as such. We're just sort of hanging out, and I'm just sort of talking in a casual sort of way. We don't have to be so serious, right? This is why we always start and end the show with have a good day. Keep on smiling. And if I start talking like that, I might think, oh, this is the end of the show. No, it's not the end of the show. We got another 10 minutes before we can wrap this up. Let's just let this see how it unfolds, yeah? Another way this comes up is like this. A rose contains the universe. And if you can understand one thing, you can understand all things. So instead of a talking head giving you a partial insight, or in a lot of cases not even insight, it's just information. Instead of a talking head giving you partial insight into something, there is something, such as a rose, that explains to you the larger reality. And it explains it in something so general that it takes a lot for you to really grasp it. Which is why if you want to understand a rose, it's not going to give you the message in just a couple of seconds. If you want to hear what a rose has to say, you don't just say, what is it that you're saying? And then wait a couple of seconds and then go, well, it didn't say anything, so now I'm leaving. It's almost like it's the same thing with trees, right? People say trees don't talk. Well, have you tried listening to them? This is also related to the acid quote number 55, which is everything speaks. Everything emanates a message, and your journey is into hearing how it speaks and what it has to say. And if you're at that stage, I mean, if you're listening to trees speak, if you're actually contemplating a rose, then you're already far beyond this moment of listening to people talking on the internet. It is already the case that when you listen to people saying what they're saying about the current cultural and political environment, it sounds not so sweet. You don't want to be identified with outrage. You don't want to be feeling these hurt feelings. Because that's exactly what's going on, yes? You're feeling good about feeling bad. You're feeling connected with the tangles and the hurts. Because that's what's popular in the informational sphere. That's what rises to the top. The things that everyone is listening to is always things that are concerned with negative emotions. There's a reason for that, which is that we are wired to identify negativity because that can be seen as a threat. And of course, the things that people talk about and the people that are drawing out these negative emotions are contending with things that actually are problems. They actually are bad things, yes? It's not realist to say that, no, there's no bad things in the world. It's not like there's no real problems and we're just sort of going with it. And I mean, I really like this analogy of the tree, because the tree, if you contemplate it, you see that it really is the perfect metaphor for what people are saying. It's the perfect metaphor for communication and for mind structures. Because when you look at a tree, you see, first of all, there's lots of different leaves. There's always more leaves than trunk in a tree. And the trunk is always central, yeah? There's always something in the middle, and you know that underneath the trunk that branches out into the roots below. So it's got this sort of symmetry to it of the top branching up and the bottom branching down. And if you look at the leaves, you think, well, okay, what angle do they go in? What colour are they? What shape are they? And in just those three things, you see that they're always different but always the same, which is that each leaf has its own shape, and yet it's always the same to that tree as compared to a different species of tree. I remember when I was in Japan, we went berry picking. What kind of berry was it? Blueberry? Mulberry? In fact, I think we did both. We did mulberries at one point and blueberries. Yeah, that's right. I remember now. Anyway, we went to the blueberry farm, and what was amazing about that was we went into rows and rows of blueberry trees to pick the blueberries and taste them. And every blueberry tasted different. There was this grand spectrum of flavor just in blueberries. And not only was it different from tree to tree, but it was also different from branch to branch and even within the bunch. Certain fruits would ripen at different speeds within the bunch. And seeing that detail, seeing that range of the spectrum of flavor brought so much depth and richness to the experience of eating fruit. And that really is the advantage of one thing having a lot of subtle experiences which are different, which is exactly how each thing has something small to say about almost anything. And this is also the case, if you notice, coming back to what we said at the start about hands. Because it's almost like your hands doing small, different things throughout the day is the spectrum, like the blueberries on the farm having different flavors. The blueberries all having their own taste. Some are sour, some are sweet, some are watery, some are tough. And there's really not enough words at all to explain how many different flavors there are in the blueberries. Just as if you really tried to, you wouldn't be able to explain in words all the different things that your hands do throughout the day. I mean, you could explain what they do, but if you were trying to explain exactly the feelings and the angles, palms up, palms down, fingers straight, fingers curled, grasping, clenching, fist. Yes, these are all hand sort of words that we could use, but eventually those words would run out. They would run out far sooner than the experience of what you have throughout the day with your hands. So really, this acid quote number 23, everything has something to say about almost anything, is really a matter of listening to the deeper significance of what's going on. And that means, of course, listen less to this informational sphere. I mean, I encourage you to listen less. I mean, listen less, but, listen to the Andrew Lake podcast. You can not listen to other things, but keep listening here. Stay tuned. Make sure you come back for another episode. I mean, I also wonder, I was going to say this thing of the negative outro, but I'm feeling pretty happy right now, so let's keep it on a positive note. Maybe next episode we can go into that. The absurdity episode is next. That will be good. Quote is, absurdity kills me every time. So tune in for that. That will be coming up soon. In the meantime, you can head over to the Etsy store, Acid Quote Tees, and check out all of the acid quotes. Order your merchandise. Support the little guy. And I look very much forward to seeing you again soon and talking with you. I mean, I'm not going to see you, so I don't know why I'm saying that, but it feels good to say, see you again. We'll meet again. Don't know how, don't know when. All right, see you later. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Keep on smiling. Sending you love and beautiful wishes, warm feelings. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.